Welcome back to another GPFans Special as we have the battle in the desert done and dusted for the moment. Part 2, though, is coming up in Saudi Arabia. The Bahrain Grand Prix yesterday was an absolute barnstormer. And the man who had his boots on the ground for that one for GP fans is Mr. Ian Parks, who joins me now to have a quick chat and a rundown of all of the action from Sunday. Ian, have you recovered? Because I don't think many of us have.
When we look back at last season, and I'm just going to touch on this first of all, you think it can't get any better, can it? It really can't. And you kind of think, okay, we've got new regulations now. We're expecting a disparate field. We're expecting a bit of a shake-up. Who knows what might happen? But I don't think any of us, in our wildest dreams, could have written the story that unfolded in Bahrain on Sunday. As you say, it was an absolute barnstormer, pretty much from start to finish, and in particular the finish. That was just totally unscripted. I know what a lot of people were saying out there on Twitter. I've read all the comments on social media. Oh, it was karma. Red Bull got their comeuppance. Yeah, I know what people are thinking, but let's try and gloss over that and let's put just some pure facts on the board and speak about what we saw on track rather than trying to read too much into it along those lines.
Yeah, I think we'll let the fates decide what happens with karma for the rest of the season. But it was interesting what took place in the final lap or so with Red Bull powertrains, with, of course, the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly overheating, going up in flames, bringing out a safety car that gets everybody shaking a little bit because we've got a bad recollection of safety cars in the short-term memory. And then Max Verstappen is having these problems with the steering late on, and then has problems with the power unit or the battery, and then Sergio Perez suffers from the same problem. For a brand new engine manufacturer, Red Bull Powertrains, this is a disaster, isn't it?
Well, as you say, you did brand new like that because, of course, they're not brand new. What is effectively in that car, as we all know, is the Honda. The power unit regulations were frozen over the winter, so pretty much, well, not pretty much, everybody has the same power units as they ended last season, almost, apart from a little bit of work just gone on over the winter. And then the start of this season, boom, regulations frozen. So we know that it's a Honda power unit. We know that that Honda power unit was helped carry Red Bull to the driver's title and very nearly managed to gain them the constructor's title as well last season. But for them to start off in this fashion, wow, as I say, you couldn't call it. It was just totally unscripted, magnificent drama. And even before that, when you think we'd had terrific action on track, let's just talk about that a little bit there, Ollie, because that battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen across laps 17, 18 and 19 was just fantastic. It's what these new regulations were made for, the fact that the cars could follow. Yes, in some respects, you've got to give credit to the DRS. There was a powerful DRS going on in Bahrain, and that did play its part. But I think for the most part, the regulations that have been introduced to ensure that these cars can follow more closely. And they were able to do that when they were not in DRS. When Charles overtook Max, Max overtook Charles, they stayed within touching distance. And that was exactly what these regulations were designed to do, to keep the cars close together. So that was good in that respect. And then, as you say, we move on towards the late drama. Max really getting aerated, his messages getting more and more volatile. Bit of bad language as well on occasion, frustration with the team that the things weren't going right with the car, with the power steering, and then ultimately culminating in the fuel system. Now, it's been investigated, Red Bull are looking into it, but their early diagnosis, their early suspicions is that it was something related to the fuel system that A, forced Max out, and then B, eventually froze the system in Checo's car and led to him spinning and on the penultimate lap at the first corner, that, as we all know, then allowed Lewis to go through and George to go through and to claim this 3-4 that even that was beyond Mercedes' wildest dreams going into the start of the race. So again, just tremendous drama.
Now you get to obviously see the drivers after the race. You are a man out there in Bahrain and you'll be jetting across the world, as we discussed earlier in the week, throughout the season for GP fans. Can you just talk about the air and the attitude around the Red Bull drivers, around the Mercedes drivers? We'll come on to Ferrari in a moment for sure, after Sunday's action.
Around Red Bull, first of all, as you can appreciate, just huge frustration. Because they knew they had a car that could challenge for the victory. And it was challenging for a victory, as we've just discussed there, with regard to Max and Charles' battle, about a third of the way through the Grand Prix. After that, lap 19, when Max attempted a move from a long way back going into turn one, he locked up his front tyre, and that pretty much cost him at that point. And as much as Red Bull and Max tried to claw it back, it was pretty evident that Ferrari and Charles had the legs in terms of their power unit. So, but then getting on towards those events that occurred later in the race, as you say, Red Bull never saw that coming. No one saw that coming. And for them to lose what was a 2-4, a potential 2-3, if Checo had been able to battle past Carlos, who knows, massive points. To come out of the first Grand Prix with 0 points. Now, the benefit, single speech marks, is that we have a very, very long season. Another 22 Grand Prix. And I say 22 because, yes, Russia has gone, but pretty much just to let the viewers know, Qatar is pretty much the favourite going into that. And from what I understand, that contracts are close to being signed, and a Qatar Grand Prix will sit in the calendar slot that Russia previously occupied. So there will definitely be another 22 races. But to have that start and to be not quite sure as to what the issues were, and to go into the next Grand Prix this weekend straight away, they've not got a gap, they've not got that little bit of extra time to try and analyse things and correct things. They've got to get it right from Friday. So they've only got a few days to try and sort this out and hope in similar conditions in terms of the weather, it being hot and dry, and on what is, and as was billed last season, as you well know, the fastest street circuit on the calendar, and what a race that produced, as we all remember from last year. They well know that they have got a real fight on their hands to not only challenge or try to challenge Ferrari again, but to avoid the gremlins that force the double retirement.
Yeah, it's that, as you mentioned, the lack of time between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia is a real twist in the tail to this, which we all knew was going to happen, obviously, when the schedule was released. But it just means that anybody who's got problems in Bahrain has very little time to sort it out. You think about McLaren as well, I suppose. They want to put Bahrain in the past and probably have another 3 weeks back at the factory trying to sort out their vehicle. But they too, after a disastrous weekend, have to go into Saudi Arabia.
Not just them, Aston Martin as well. Those two teams, real problems. McLaren have got a good handle on what they think their issues are. They know they've got these brake cooling problems, and they've only got an interim fix, or they had only an interim fix for the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's likely that that will carry over into Saudi Arabia. They are looking to bring new parts even to Saudi Arabia, fly them out there, because it is a very different type of track as well, as we all know. So they've got a good handle. And as for Aston Martin, real problems for them as well. They were fully expecting, with all the resources that they've got, with all the new heads that they've brought in terms of personnel, that they would be certainly leading the midfield, if not nudging the back of the front runners. But to come out of the weekend pretty much as the 9th worst team alongside McLaren was just an absolute disaster for them. Their new team principal, Mike Crack, he's only been on board, as we all know, just a few short weeks now. And speaking to him last night, he knows that he's got a fight on his hands. He's got a, let's put it this way, he's got a lot to try and understand for a new guy coming in. In many respects, it was almost like the wrong time for him to start immediately before the beginning of the season, with these new cars pretty much already done and dusted and ready to hit the track. So his influence is going to take a long time to come on board. So for McLaren and Aston Martin, yes, they're going to be doing all they can because we know they've got the financial resources within the budget cap, of course. That's another criteria. And we know they've got the personnel. So they will make strides, but everybody else is going to be making strides. It's just a question of, can they make bigger strides than the opposition around them?
And we've touched on as well in our conversations the development that's going to take place very quickly, probably over this season. There was always going to be winners and losers with the new aerodynamic changes, and those are two of the biggest losers coming out of Bahrain. Just finally then, let's talk about the biggest winners. 1-2 for Ferrari. Their first win since Singapore 2019. That was also a 1-2 as well. It took a bit of luck to get it, but you have to say that the Scuderia probably deserved it on the balance of the weekend and how everything has gone leading into the start of this new season.
Yeah, they absolutely deserved it. And bearing in mind, of course, Ollie, that win, as you say, Singapore 2019, that was a run of 3 consecutive wins, or that was the end of a run of 3 consecutive wins that the Scuderia had back then. Charles had actually previously won in Belgium and Italy, and then they went to Singapore and Seb won there, and it was the 1-2. But of course, you got to remember, around that period of time, this was when there was that whole bone of contention about Ferrari's power unit, and that they'd been doing slightly untoward things in the background that they were eventually found out about. They were eventually punished with this very secretive punishment that the FIA handed out. So those wins will always have an asterisk against them, bearing in mind, as I've just discussed there, the issues with the power unit. On this occasion, this was clean, hard racing. This was pure Ferrari power, pure Ferrari engineering. So in that respect, this win yesterday, this 1-2, was a true 1-2 for the team. One they can be super proud of when you consider that back in 2020, they suffered their worst performance for 40 years in finishing 6th in the Constructors' Championship. So they've come a very long way, and all credit to them for delivering a car and a power unit that really has thrust them back to the front. And I think it's pretty evident from yesterday's performance that they are going to be not so much the team to beat over the course of the season, but they most definitely are going to be right up there throughout the course of the season, pretty much alongside Red Bull. And of course, we've not touched too much on Mercedes, but a quick word on them. Again, like McLaren and Aston Martin, we know they've got the resources and the personnel, and I would expect Mercedes to be up there fighting very soon. How soon? I don't know. They're confident that they know what the solutions are that they need to put on the car. This could turn into, and let's hope it turns into, a 3-horse battle this season for the titles.
Yeah, Mercedes with that podium, of course, the 3-4 finish with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Again, and a real element of good fortune to it, but Toto and the gang must have been absolutely elated very quickly, and just to at least have had somebody on the podium to get the points haul that they've got. And look, if you can get one over Red Bull as well, everybody's playing nice in the media. That animosity from last season is still there for sure.
Of course it is. It's always gonna linger. You only had to see some of the social media comments yesterday that were flying around between the fans to appreciate that level of animosity. It's turned into a real football rivalry in many respects now. But for Mercedes, it was pretty much a get out of jail free card, wasn't it? They went into the Grand Prix pretty much knowing that they got the 3rd best car. If they could hang on to the coattails of Ferrari and Red Bull, then they were going to be doing well. They got it wrong strategically in switching Lewis very early onto the hard tyre. That really was not the tyre to go on at all at that stage of the Grand Prix. And they were losing a second a lap to the front runners. Obviously, they then changed Lewis very quickly onto the medium tyre, and that was by far a more racier tyre. And it at least had them there, but they were never going to do any better than 5th or 6th at that point in the race that they were running when the incidents started to occur. Initially, as you mentioned, around Pierre Gasly's car fire, then the safety car, and then, of course, they inherited that 3rd, 4th position. But as we all know in F1, that's what helps win titles. It is these incidents, these situations, that when you look back over the entire course of a season, you can think, yeah, that was what helped us.
Ian, thank you so much, as always, for joining us from Bahrain. You can catch all of Ian's musings on gpfans.com. Give us a follow by hitting the subscribe button down below here on the YouTube channel as well. We will have plenty more action to get into this F1 season.
See you in Jeddah, folks.